There are pains you never created, yet they live within you, in the way you love, the way you grow angry, and the way you move through life each day. If you stay with this video until the end, you will see how spiritual awakening can break the repeating cycles of silence, control, and hidden wounds within families, so the next generation no longer has to carry what was never theirs to begin with. Beneath the surface of modern families, there are fractures that I cannot see. They appear at quiet dinner tables where people sit together but feel worlds apart. They emerge in the harsh words of parents, which are in truth only echoes of the pain they once endured. Trauma does not exist only in the grand tragedies of war or poverty. It hides in prolonged silence, in emotions suppressed, in expectations that weigh so heavily on the young. A child raised in such an atmosphere learns not to cry, learns to hide their vulnerability. And when they grow older, they repeat the very patterns they once resented. In today's restless society, where people are pushed to perform and succeed, these hidden wounds are buried beneath polished appearances. Many live with constant anxiety, an emptiness that success cannot fill, and a loneliness no company seems to cure. This is the shadow of our modern age. Prosperity on the outside, fractures within. It is like an underground river, swelling stronger the more it is blocked, waiting for the smallest crack to surge through. Sudden bursts of anger, unexplained sadness, repeated behaviors that wound ourselves and others, all are signals that something deep remains unhealed. These wounds do not vanish when ignored. They wait for the weakest moment to surface, and when they do, one begins to see. The problem is not only in the present, but also rooted in layers of memory etched long before our own lives began. In today's world, these traces of inheritance rarely reveal themselves openly. They show up in subtle habits and inexplicable reactions. One person erupts in rage at the smallest slight. Another carries a constant undercurrent of fear, though no threat is near. Families often replay the same tragedies across generations: divorce, addiction, violence, or cold distance. On the surface, they appear as isolated events, but when seen with deeper vision, they connect into a long chain reaching back to a first wound that was never named. Carl Jung once warned, "What is not made conscious will return again and again as fate." If the memories buried in a family's collective unconscious are not brought into the light, they will continue to speak through the behaviors, choices, and emotions of the descendants. What we often mistake for personality is sometimes nothing more than the residue of an unhealed wound. And in this realization lies the opportunity. Instead of living bound by inherited pain, one can become the one who ends the cycle. But the path to ending this cycle is not through denial or escape. Liberation begins when one dares to pause, to turn and face the hidden roots of these invisible wounds. In Jungian psychology, this is the first step of individuation, the journey of bringing what has been buried in the unconscious into the light of awareness, so it no longer governs us from the shadows. This is never easy. It is like opening a long locked room filled with memories, emotions, and truths that generations of a family have chosen to silence. Those who walk this path often feel torn apart. One part of them longs for freedom, for healing, yet another trembles before the realization that parents and grandparents, the very ones they love, were both victims and perpetrators of this inherited cycle. It is here, in this painful tension, that compassion and grief entwine, and it is here that the deeper meaning of spiritual awakening begins to reveal itself. It is not only the redemption of an individual, but the lightening of an entire bloodline. As one steps forward, the first waves to rise are the repressed emotions: anger, shame, abandonment, or the unfulfilled hunger for love. Jung called this work with the shadow, the part of the psyche that holds everything we refuse to acknowledge. Yet within a family, the shadow is not just personal, it is collective. It carries the unspoken secrets, the hidden wounds, the mistakes never admitted but never forgotten. To touch them is not only to meet oneself, but to meet the history of one's lineage. In daily life, this shows up in very tangible ways. A parent may suddenly realize the suffocating control they exert over their child is nothing more than an echo of their own childhood. Another may discover that their crippling fear of failure was not born in them, but passed down from parents who once lived in insecurity, haunted by scarcity. These realizations are not meant to condemn, but to reveal the underground river still shaping our lives. And when these truths are brought into the open, the cycle begins to crack. From that moment, healing becomes a double journey. The liberation of oneself and the liberation of the family as a whole. The one who dares to step onto this unmarked path becomes a pioneer. Every trembling step opens new space, where pain can finally be named and feelings can be honored instead of buried. That courage creates a break in the invisible chain, a pause where history can finally be rewritten. Jung emphasized that individuation is never for the individual alone. It always contributes to the transformation of the collective. Within families, when one person breaks the old pattern, the change reverberates outward. A child raised in this new atmosphere no longer carries the same weight. A parent witnessing this transformation may also awaken to their own limitations. What was once passed down like a sentence can, through the awakening of one, be transformed into freedom for many. And here lies the true gift of spiritual awakening. It does not end with peace for oneself. It offers a different future to those who come after us. But this release does not happen in a single moment. It is more like untying knots one by one. There are days when a person feels they have broken free, only to have the smallest family conflict awaken the old wounds once again. This is because the unconscious does not dissolve at once. It requires patience, observation, and uncompromising honesty. This is why Jung emphasized the importance of working with the shadow, not to eliminate it, but to bring it into awareness, to look directly at it as part of the truth. In practice, this may begin with small yet powerful acts, daring to voice one's feelings instead of remaining silent, daring to set boundaries instead of enduring, daring to forgive without pretending to forget. Each seemingly small choice is a fragment of rebirth, and over time, these changes begin to touch the closest relationships, between parent and child, between siblings once burdened by tension. Heavy silence gives way to conversation. Coldness softens into understanding. This is not merely the healing of one person, it is the opening of a doorway through which the whole family can step into a new way of being. As this process deepens, a subtle yet profound shift emerges. One is no longer entirely governed by old reactions. Anger may still arise, fear may still appear, but instead of consuming, they become signals to observe, to understand. This is the moment of inner maturity, when the ego ceases to project the unconscious onto others, and the individual begins to enter the true path of individuation. And within this transformation lies something precious. Love and compassion begin to take the place of judgment and blame. When one understands that parents or grandparents acted only from their own wounds, the door of forgiveness opens. Not the cheap kind of forgiveness, but the deep realization that all are links in a long chain of pain. As this understanding grows, a person not only lays down the weight for themselves, but also releases those who came before, whether they are still alive or long gone. Here is where the power of spiritual awakening reveals itself. It surpasses the boundary of the individual, reaching into the hidden currents of family, and from there, rippling out into the community. When one cycle is broken, it does not only save a single life, It spares future generations from repeating the same suffering. And then comes a moment when one looks back and realizes that the journey was not just a battle with pain, but the birth of a new self. The wounds that once bound now stand as proof of strength and resilience. By daring to face the darkness within the family, one has uncovered a lasting light, the light of awareness. Not a blinding, fleeting light, but a quiet, steady one, strong enough to guide even those who will come after. At this point, a person no longer seeks recognition from the outside, no longer clings to perfection or to old patterns. They stand firm on a new foundation, one built upon the profound knowing that pain need not be passed down any longer. Their children will grow in a different space, where love is not hidden by fear, where sincerity takes the place of long silence. And in this way, the current of the family begins to change direction. Carl Jung once said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." It is by daring to descend into the depths of ancestral pain, to face and reconcile with it, that the ascent becomes possible. This is the most sacred gift of spiritual awakening, a liberation that extends beyond the self, touching the very soul of the family and rewriting the story of the future. Every journey of healing begins with awareness. If this message resonates with you, let it be a reminder that transformation can begin today. And don't forget to subscribe, so together we may continue to explore the deepest layers of the psyche and find the light hidden within even the darkest places.